Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody who doesn't identify with those labels. I'm Stu Simpson, and welcome back to the Stu Simpson Show podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest indeed, and we met in a under some very interesting circumstances. Their name is Wenke Langhof. Did I say that, Wenke? Did I say it right?
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, we met at a sweat lodge in Leicester.
We did, yes.
And what took you to? Why did you go to the sweat lodge?
I am a shamanic practitioner and have worked shamanically since 2016, and I hadn't done a sweat lodge yet. So even though I grew up with saunas and being German, I just went to experience it really and to see what it was all about, because it seems to be cropping up more and more in society these days, the name sweat lodge. So I thought I'll give it a try.
Yeah. I had very similar reasonings as well. But it says on your website, you're a health and life coach. Is it Budwig or Budwig?
Yeah, Budwig. Yeah.
A Budwig diet, and you do Reiki and EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, or tapping, I think, and matrix reimprinting, and as you mentioned, shamanism. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think, like many people, I'm sure will experience once they start walking their spiritual path, you kind of just keep moving because it's such an exciting path to walk, and you just move from one thing to the next. So, my path was healing, and these are all the things that have helped me in my own healing and that I now share with others.
Excellent. And so let's delve into a bit of your history. Where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Germany. I actually grew up in socialist East Germany as a child, in a very rural area. So very much the sort of upbringing we would regard today as idyllic in many ways, even though politically many people might argue it wasn't. But, we lived in the countryside. My dad was a hunter. I grew up in forests surrounded by fields. As children, we were extremely free. We would run around, we would cycle around, and our parents often didn't know where we were until the church bell would ring at 5:45. And we knew then wherever we were, we could hear the bells. And that was the sign to make your way home. And if by sort of 6 o'clock, 6:10, you weren't home, you knew Daddy would be on his bike looking for you, and then you'd be in trouble. But it was a very free upbringing, contradictory to the political system that you would, the ideas you would have around that. And a very upbringing close to nature, which I think still has formed me and still feeds into everything I do today. I mean, we had a big garden. We would grow all our vegetables. Wow. We were pretty much self-sufficient, in terms of food. My dad would hunt for the meat we ate. Yeah. You would substitute with stuff you bought, but there wasn't much in the shops anyway. So a lot of the people were just self-sufficient and grew what they needed.
That sounds awesome. So were you brought up with any sort of religious beliefs at all?
No, not at all. So on the contrary, East Germany, socialism was regarded obviously as the sort of state ideology. And there were churches in the country, but unless a lot of people who went to church would have worked independent of the state, and there were not many jobs that were independent of the state. So if you were a plumber or an electrician, you had your own business, then those were the people that would go to church because they didn't need the state for their career path. So anyone who needed, my mum was a teacher, my dad actually worked for the security services. So anyone who had a state job, you would have really had a disadvantage if you were seen to practice religion in any way.
Right.
So I would say I always believed in God, and I always believed in something bigger than us being there. But I didn't have a formal religious upbringing, in terms of going to church and being taught stories about Jesus. All that came later when I searched for it. But my early childhood definitely didn't have any of that.
So where did your actual spiritual journey start? Where did it all begin?
Well, I think the spiritual answer would be many lifetimes ago.
Excellent.
But yeah, let's stick to sort of this lifetime.
Yeah.
I would say in 2016, I would say it began. At the time, I suffered really severely from stage 4 endometriosis, an illness that affects a lot of women. There's a lot more knowledge about it now and a lot more media coverage about it. It's an illness that comes along with a horrendous amount of pain. Mm-hmm. And I think I just got to the point where living in this world was just too painful. And I was looking for a way out. And, suicide was one way out and the spiritual path was another.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I chose the spiritual one, even though I had many, many months looking at the other one as well and weighing up options. But yeah, I'm glad I'm here to tell the story today. And I went down the spiritual path and it totally saved me and anchored me and healed me. And I would not want to change anything that's happened in my life, including my illness, because it brought me on that path. And I'm incredibly grateful for it today.
Absolutely. I think gratitude is a very important part of change and acceptance and moving forward with things. And that's a beautiful, beautiful way of encapsulating it, because I've got people in my life at the minute who are suffering and they're going through their own pain. And I've been through my own stuff myself, and I've had to go, look, it's you can get through this. It's okay. This is part of your growth. It's part of your change. So, but the gratitude for all of it. I was with my friend Franz, who you met at the Sweat Lodge. I was talking about this with him the other day, and he's got, there's some things I regret. I'm like, don't regret anything. You shouldn't, because all these things make you who you are. So for the people who are listening at home, can you give us some ideas about what is health and life coaching? What does that involve?
Mm-hmm. So health and life coaching. So basically what happened was that I ended up healing myself through my own spiritual journey, and I encountered a lot of modalities that helped me along the way. And in the end, I thought, well, I've learned so much, and I went from being in horrendous pain all the time to literally within 18 months not having any symptoms of endometriosis anymore. After years and years of going to specialists, years and years of suffering, years and years of being told there is nothing you can do about this. So here I was, 18 months after having started my healing journey, and I had no pain, I had no symptoms. I was living a life, full of joy and full of discovery. And I thought, well, this is amazing. And clearly people don't know about this. There are so many women that suffer from this illness, and many suffer silently, and that's being changed now because there is a lot more talk about it in the media and much more coverage. And I just had this real deep urge of sharing my story and of helping others and teaching them what they could do to help themselves. So one of the, let's say, easiest ways to get into this was to say, well, okay, I'm going to do a qualification over 2 years and become a health and life coach, because what had healed me was an approach that included nutrition, detoxing the body, and learning techniques of stress management. Mm-hmm. So stress is the major culprit, in a way, in our society for all the chronic illnesses, all the cancers, and endometriosis. And that was the biggest change that had helped me in my journey, because I dabbled with nutrition for years before, and I'd cut out dairy and wheat and all of those things that helped with my endometriosis symptom, but none of it had really healed it. It had kind of stopped the deterioration, but it hadn't improved anything. Whereas when I actually learned techniques to help me deal with my stress better and to help me look at my thought process and my beliefs and all those deeper issues, that's when the healing started. And I could almost every month feel I was getting better and I
Yeah.
was healing.
Yeah.
So health and life coaching. So a lot of modalities, as you've mentioned before, that I work with are very much energy medicines. So there's Reiki, there's Shamanism, there's matrix reimprinting and EFT. All those techniques very much work in the subconscious. They work in the energy field. And for a lot of people out there, they're probably regarded as, oh, what's this? I don't know. Can I trust this? So to me, doing a qualification as a health and life coach, where you get basic training in nutrition, you get life coaching techniques that very much any psychotherapist would teach, or any NLP practitioner would learn as well. And so it was a more secular way in, where I thought people might trust that more.
Yeah.
And then once they develop the trust to me, they might be a bit more open to the things that had truly helped me, which wasn't the therapy, but actually the energy medicine stuff.
Yeah. I've touched on some energy medicine with in a previous episode through Reiki. What is your practice of Reiki? How did you learn to do that?
Mm-hmm. So I actually had a Reiki treatment myself, and that was my first introduction to Reiki in 2014, because I was in such pain, I had booked myself into with a masseuse to have some massages to just relieve the tension that I was holding everywhere in my body.
Yeah.
Through, being in pain all the time, your muscles tense up. And probably the third session in or whatever, she said, "Oh, I also do Reiki. Would you like me to try this?" Ooh. So I hadn't heard of Reiki, but I'm open for stuff. So I said, yeah, why not? Go on, give me a Reiki treatment.
Give it a go.
And I literally had no idea what to expect. So I was like lying on the couch, thinking, okay, let's see how this is different from a massage. And of course, she didn't touch my body at all.
Yeah.
Yet I felt so relaxed. I had a level of relaxation that I hadn't felt in years. And I almost felt like I was floating on my couch, and, and the pain would disappear.
Wow.
And it was just amazing. But at the time, I guess I was still where a lot of people are, and I didn't really trust this. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that I'd had a very positive experience, I went back to just having normal massages afterwards.
Yeah.
But that was the first intro to Reiki, and she didn't know anything about me. I'd gone to her for a massage, and she had actually picked up. She said, "Are you pregnant after the treatment?" And I said, "Well, no, why?" And she said, "Well, I can feel a tightness in your womb and ovary area."
Wow.
And of course, this is where the endometriosis would sit.
Yeah.
So I was amazed how someone who didn't touch me at all could pick something like this up about me. And I guess there was an interest, but also a bit of fear.
Yeah.
So I left it at that. And then in 2016, I had hit rock bottom. I was ready to kill myself, basically, because I didn't want to live anymore. I just could not bear the pain. And my local health food shop, I had like an email list that I was on, and sent, a flyer out of a local girl who was teaching Reiki. And it was one of those things where you just follow your intuition, and you just think, okay, I'm just going to try this. And I remember sitting there in the Reiki class, in the first course we did, Reiki level 1, which is all about self-healing and learning to feel energies and to work with energies and channel them for self-healing. And I just had this really deep sense of, this is where I belong, or I'm home.
Yeah.
And that was enough, even though everything I learned was always a mix of amazement and spookiness and how does this work? But it does work. It was almost like I couldn't negate my experience, but at the same time, I'm a very rational person normally.
Yeah.
So this was against everything I would normally have believed in with my rational brain.
Yeah.
But I was at that point where I thought, this is actually doing me good, so I'm just going to go with it. I'm not going to question it. rationally, I cannot explain why I'm feeling so good on this, but I'm just gonna do it. It's not drugs, it's legal, you know. So I did my Reiki self-healing, and then from then moved on to doing level 2, and then became a Reiki master in 2018 eventually. And today I teach Reiki courses. So I treat people with Reiki for, people who come. It's very much part of my general practice with people. But the main thing today, I probably would say, as a Reiki master, I teach others how to self-heal, and I take them through the levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, and pass this beautiful Japanese healing technique on to whoever wants to learn it.
That's so awesome. I think it often takes us, when we reach rock bottom, to open up. It seems that there's something in us when you end up kind of going, I will look anywhere for anything that might have some sort of impact on how I'm feeling or how my life is going. And I think that happens for an awful lot of people. And so maybe that's part of the dark night of the soul. And that's part of that changing process. As part of your practice, you also do a thing called the Budwig diet. I've never even heard of this. What is it?
So Dr. Joanna Budwig was a German cell researcher in the 1950s, actually, and onwards. And she was an incredible woman, way ahead of her time. She was actually nominated for, I think, 6 Nobel Prizes in her time, which for a woman is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And she worked for the state government as a researcher, and mainly on fats and cells. And she discovered in her research, at the time, cancer was starting to be, be detected more and more in people. And she wondered why that was. So, and she looked at the cell, and because of her background and her research into fats and the cell, she noticed that the cell membranes of cells in a cancer cell basically had deteriorated to a point where they did not communicate with the body anymore. And she looked at what's causing this and found out about the stress linked. She found out, it was after the war, and she found out about the importance of good fats in our body.
Yeah.
After the war, there was a lot of margarine that was eaten because it was a cheaper alternative. So she discovered that actually, this margarine is really not good for the fat that our body needs to restore the cell membranes, which is a process that happens all the time. And that if the body uses fat that comes from a processed fat product, the communication that would normally happen will eventually break down, because it's almost like those processed fats haven't got the ability to communicate with the proteins that would bring the nutrients into the cell.
Yeah.
So eventually the cell wants to survive and starts to survive not by nutrients coming into it, but by a fermentation process that it starts within the cell. So it's basically cut off from the outside of the, from the rest of the body. So Budwig looked as a researcher as how can we reverse this process? And she developed a protocol based on giving good fats in forms of flaxseed oil into the body, and nuts and seeds and all those natural fats, together with protein, which is quark she uses for that. But protein, I've got a lot of vegan clients, so they would use chickpeas or lentils and other sources of vegetable-based protein. So Budwig would use quark, which is a bit like the Greek yogurt.
Yeah, I've had quark.
It's high in protein and has naturally no fat. She mixes it with the linseed oil, and that's basically becomes a really lovely kind of yogurty cream that you end up eating in the morning at lunchtime. And that restores the cell membrane of the cells. So the cell can then start communicating with the body again. The immune system kicks in with its normal immune system function, and you're slowly reversing that process that made you ill back into health.
Yeah.
So I knew about Budwig because in Germany, my parents had both had cancer, and the GP in our village happened to have breast cancer, and she healed herself. So within doctors, Budwig is really well known in Germany. So I knew about Budwig, and when I learned about a link between endometriosis and cancer, where endometriosis actually starts with the same cell change that cancer starts, i.e. this Warburg effect fermentation process, I thought, oh, hang on, Budwig is what healed my parents of cancer in Germany.
Yeah.
So I went and spent my inheritance basically and went to Germany to a Budwig clinic near Stuttgart called the 3E Center, and spent a month there. So they run monthly programs for mainly people with cancer. And I thought, well, I'm going to give this a go. I thought I could have a new car, but that's not going to improve my life, whereas I can invest the same money in this clinic. It was 10,000 euros at the time. I don't know what it is today. And went, and that month literally put me on a total change, and changed my life. And I'm so grateful. I never regret a single penny I spent there.
Yeah, it sounds like a great investment.
It gave me my life back. So Budwig is very close to my heart because, it basically, it helped me heal. And what Budwig always said was, nutrition and detoxing the body is really important. But if the body is stressed while you're doing all this, none of it is really going to have an effect, because you're going to be in the fight-flight response.
Yeah.
And your parasympathetic nervous system that would deal with the absorption of nutrients, that would deal with all your enzyme household, your hormone household, your detox, all those things, the digestion, that's switched off when you're under stress, because that's the fight-flight response, basically. So Budwig's protocol very much focuses on stress management and learning techniques like meditation, like breathing techniques, like mantra singing. There I was at this clinic thinking, oh, let's see what they do, and I'll probably have infusions on and God knows what supplements, and there I was mantra singing.
Excellent.
and doing laughing yoga, and and learning Qigong.
Yeah.
So all that made me realize where I had gone wrong before, where I had focused solely on nutrition, trying to heal myself. And it made me realize how important the stress, learning how to deal with stress better actually is for healing.
So that's the Budwig diet. It sounds extremely interesting, and your life has very much been changed by it. And you also practice EFT. I've done a bit of tapping myself in the past, emotional freedom technique. When did you start doing yours?
So as part of my health and life coaching training, we had, very basic training in EFT as one of the modalities you can use with clients to help them deal with stress. And there was something there as I was learning it where I thought there was more to this than what we were learning, as part of this health life coaching course. It was really just an introduction into it as one of the forms, one of the tools you can use and introduce your clients to. So when locally in my town, a guy called Carl Dawson, who was one of the original 29 EFT masters, put on a course literally on my doorstep. I thought, well, I'm going to sign up and find out more about this. And I actually just found out about the EFT and just signed up for the EFT. But just before I went on the course, one of those emails came that said, oh, all the ones signed up for EFT, blah, blah, blah. And the ones that are carrying on that week with Matrix, Reimprinting, this is the info you need. So I thought, oh, I'd never heard of Matrix Reimprinting, but I pretty much booked the week off anyway. So I thought, well, why not do the whole week and see what this Matrix Reimprinting is all about? So for me, the two go very much together. So EFT or emotional freedom technique, tapping, you use energy points of your body, and anyone can literally go online. If you put in EFT, emotional freedom technique, there will be images that give you the points that you need to tap on. There will be YouTube videos where you can tap on pretty much any emotion you might be going through. There is EFT for anxiety, EFT for stress, EFT for menstrual problems, whatever you might have. If you search on YouTube, there will be videos. And EFT, the idea is it will free you of the emotion. So as you're going into anger, let's say, instead of that anger consuming you, and we all know that you can carry that with you. If someone upsets you, you can carry it with you for days, if not weeks, if not years for some people. So instead of doing that, you use the tapping and you tap yourself through the emotion of anger. And as you're tapping, you're feeling into that emotion, you're feeling into where in the body you're feeling that, and you are consciously releasing that through the tapping. And then halfway through, as you're feeling, you will feel as you're tapping that your body will get calmer, your anger will slowly subside. And when that starts to happen, you try and switch into some sort of positive emotion. So you're trying to see, okay, well, I'm angry at the moment, but what can I see that's positive in this? What am I learning from this? So that's the sort of EFT process. What matrix reimprinting does is it uses the tapping to connect to your subconscious. A lot of our beliefs have been formed in childhood, and they're running in the background without us even being aware of them. They will be beliefs that you have grown up with because your parents, your grandparents held those beliefs. And they were passed on to you, and you never even questioned it, because as a child, you don't question things. You just watch the people around you and make sense of the world by observing how other people make sense of the world. So, of course, we all know that some things that our parents might have done might be down to beliefs they held, which were actually either wrong beliefs in the first place, or society and our life has changed and they are no longer valid beliefs to hold. So matrix reimprinting goes into belief patterns and helps us to reprogram, if you like. If you think as a child you were programmed to believe certain things, you can use EFT to connect to the subconscious, find those beliefs or those patterns that might keep you in a loop now as an adult and might prevent you from living your best life. And you can actually then use a process to reprogram your belief. Where you connect to your younger self and, with colors and shapes and what have you. And you go, oh, actually, from my adult perspective today, how would I actually see that event that might have happened in the past? What meaning would I give it with my knowledge today? And how can I heal that in my energy field so that not the old belief, but the new belief actually sits there?
Wow. And does shamanism, is that a part of that changing these beliefs in somebody?
Yes. So all of those modalities like Reiki or EFT and matrix reimprinting, they are based on the belief that we are not just a body, we are not just a mind, but we are actually a mind, body, and spirit. So to me, I always say in the 21st century, spirit to me is the energy part of us. And shamans have always worked with that energy part of the human being. So shamanism, or a shaman in tribal cultures, would be the medicine men of the tribe. Shamanism has existed as long as humans have existed. So there have always been healers in communities. Today we call them doctors. Back then they were the shamans of their community. And they will use nature. So they're very much in tune with nature and use herbs and whatever nature has to give to help with the healing. But a big aspect of shamanic work is to actually regard the human as a mind, body, and spirit. And to have the belief that the energy always comes first. And physics would say the same thing. Yeah, that there's always energy first, and then from that energy densifying, you will eventually get to matter and to the physical world forming. So a shaman would never just cure the body or heal the body. A shaman would always, in a first instance, actually heal the energy field.
Yeah.
Because the energy field holds the information that the body grows into, if you like.
Interesting.
So if there is a body that's not functioning correctly, a shaman would believe, well, the energy must have been not functioning correctly for a long time for the physical to manifest eventually into that imbalance. So to allow the body to heal, you first have to create an energy field that will support that healing body.
That's amazing.
Almost like a mold, if you think,
well,
if your mold is faulty in the energy field, your body isn't going to be able to heal into the mold. You need to heal the vibrational field first. So again, shamanism works with altered states of consciousness, which all these things tap into. So there's something called shamanic journeying or shamanic dreaming. So it's dream states, they would have said, and the idea is that in the energy world, there is knowledge, wisdom that we can tap into. And shamanic dreaming allows you to bring that back into your consciousness in a way. So just like in EFT and matrix reimprinting, we use this technique of getting into our subconscious to reform our beliefs. In the shamanic world, you would have a power animal or a spirit guide. You would learn how to journey to a drum beat, and you would connect to your power animal or your spirit guide, and they would guide you. So that takes the mind out because you're being guided. It's always, all this work is about bypassing our mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the rational mind is always trying to tell you those stories that are based on your beliefs. So we've got to bypass those. So a shaman would do that through a shamanic journey to a drum beat, and you connect to your spirit or your guide or your power animal, and you go in with a question that you might have about your life and say, well, why can I not change this? Or why am I always getting angry when X, Y, Z happens? Or why am I so depressed and I cannot get myself out of this? And your spirit guides have answers that in your consciousness you would not find, but in the energy field, those answers are there.
That's so cool. So we've touched on a lot of things in a very short space of time. If people want to find out more about all this stuff in more detail, how can they get in touch with you?
So the easiest way is probably to have a look at my website, which is www.wenke, which is WENKE-Langhof, LANGHOF for Freddie.com. That's the easiest way to see what I do, to learn a bit about my story. There's a blog on there, and to get in touch with me via the contact link on there.
Wonderful. Wenke, it's been absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And it's been a privilege to meet you. And I hope our friendship continues in the future.
I hope so too. Yeah. I hope there'll be many more sweat lodges to come.
Absolutely.
I did enjoy that.
It was so good. It was so good. It really has changed me. And it's just meeting you and everybody else who was involved in that experience. It was a very moving place to be. So, and our journey continues together. It's wonderful.
Yes.
Namaste.
Thank you for this. Namaste.
Namaste, beautiful friend. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.